5-day challenge of taking a black and white photograph a day is now over, and in my endeavours I ended up producing somewhere in the region of 20 images. On the first day I was just looking around for ideas and images, and on the second day I started using the macro lens quite a bit, and on the third day it was quite icy, so I was able to go around, as I showed last week, and film ice particles that I was seeing all over the place. On the fourth day I went out and I found there were dewdrops on spiders' webs in some of the flowers in the garden, and I took this image initially, and then I realised that it was quite interesting looking at the droplets that were there at the bottom. I actually put the macro lens on and started to get this kind of image, which seemed very appealing, just to see the droplets suspended almost like they're parallel universes. I started off with this image, and last week I had basically applied various different filters, went to the image adjustment and changed that to black and white to get this effect here. What I didn't realize at that point was that I was doing a very destructive method. In other words, I was applying that to just that layer. Another way of doing it is to go to the layers and new adjustments and then use the black and white tool here, and what that does is creates a new layer above the original one, so I've still got my color there if I want. Again, I'm going to play around just to see how I can enhance this image by just using the sliders. Now if I take the yellow and increase it, you can see that some of the background it merges with the droplets, but if I take it back the other way, it actually increases the power, I think, of the droplets, just because the background's darker. And again, playing around with the greens, we can darken some of the areas in there. Let's see what cyan does. I'll let that, keep that there. By moving the cyan towards the left, you can see it darkens, and then making it to the right, it brightens the highlight areas just there. And we'll try the blue. In the histogram you can see here that if I increase it too much, that has been crushed at the top there. It's just bleached out, and there's a little warning sign. So I'm going to bring that down again to about there, and it means there's still some detail in the highlights just there, and we'll just see what the magenta does. So that's something I did with that particular image. The next image, again I found some leaves with dewdrops that were sort of, looks as though they were travelling towards the centre there. So again I did the same thing, went to layers, added a black and white layer in there, which again allows me to keep the colour information if I want, and just played around with the sliders to see what kind of image I could get. Now that adds a bit of punch by bringing the yellow down. If I went the other way, you can see I'm losing some of the definition of the image, but by bringing that down here, it kind of adds a bit more punch to it, which I quite like. And again, the green does something similar. Let's see what magenta does, cyan does, and the blue. That's quite nice. Let's have a look at the magenta. So it was quite interesting, but I thought it might be an idea to flip the image over so it looks as though the droplets were coming in the other direction. So if I go to select all, and then go edit, transform, and flip horizontally, I then had that effect. I just want to deselect by clicking on the side. So now as you read, because in the West we tend to go from left to right, it now looks as though those droplets are sort of moving in that direction and going towards the center, and I called that image Oblivion. So again, we'll just save that one. Eventually on day 5 went out and decided that I wasn't going to use the extension tubes to get in close to the objects. There was nice blue sky, but there was lots of heavy clouds coming in from the sea across the Cooley Mountains. There's also a lot of mist, so it was kind of a very misty kind of day. So I took some images of the sun coming from behind some of the clouds, and how the lens flare sort of burst across the image. On the whole, it was a bigger struggle, I think, taking the photographs that day. It was more of a challenge. And when I got back into the editing process using Photoshop, I found myself going through about 20 images and deciding not to use certain ones, and because in some cases visually they weren't as stunning as the close-up shots that are taken earlier in the week. So I wanted to see what this would be like in black and white. So again, so I'm being non-destructive, going for a new layer, black and white, and there we go, there's the image. And again, we just want to play around and see what we can create by just tweaking. Now if I bring that down too much, you can see that some of the highlights have gone black, so I don't want to do that. So I'm going to bring that back the other way. So that was the other one I was working on. And again with the reds, if I bring the red up as opposed to the way I was going down this way, if I bring the reds up, it actually adds, it almost looks as though there's either snow or something on the ground. And again, could make it feel as though we're using infrared. So again, I'm just playing around with these. Again, if I go too far that way, although it's showing up some of the detail, it's adding a lot of grain into the image, and it's made this lens flare go dark, so I'm just going to bring it back the other way. And again, we'll play around with the blue. If I bring the blue down, it darkens the sky, but if we bring too much, we get lots of noise in the clouds, which I don't really want. So or in the, it brings a lot of noise into the sky, so I'll bring that back. And let's just see what magenta does. Magenta's not, it's doing a little bit, but it's again, it's just adding this dark area in the highlights of the flare, which I don't really want, so I'll bring it back the other way. And that's how I kind of played around with that image. Now I can see there's a little bit of something here, so I probably need to crop that. And we'll just bring that up a little bit. So there. Now what's interesting is that there's the image is split into thirds. So using the rule of third, that seems to fit quite nicely. I've got the sun on that line there, and on this line here we've got a little bit of that lens flare, and there's a bump in there. But if I wanted to play around with it a little bit more, I could bring that down so that is now more central to that. Let's see if we bring that in across this way, and again that intersection just there is crossing the center of the sun. A little bit of the cloud in there as well, we've got that at the top there, so that seems to be working quite well. That line across where there's a little bit of the land in the background, that seems to be fitting, and again this is just going through there, so I can double click and say that's fine, and that creates a more pleasing sort of image, I think. The other thing is that the diagonals coming in there of the cloud is quite interesting, and then we've got the rays, which is creating that sort of nice kind of triangular shape, giving you a sense of focus. So we'll save that one again. The last image then was just the local church. I'm just going to go to the layer, add black and white, and just again see what I can do with this to intensify the image a little bit more. Now even just taking the reds and bringing those down and increasing the yellow adds a bit more contrast into that image. And then if I play around with the greens, it's not doing too much. It's if I bring it down this way to the left, it's dark in the grass, but if I bring it the other way, it's kind of lighting it a little bit. I'm going to keep it roughly there. And then the blue, if I bring that down, it just emphasizes the sky. And then we'll play around here and see what we get. And the magenta's not doing anything. So that's reasonably okay, so I'm happy enough with that. I'm just going to go to the back there and select all. Now we've got everything is slanted in the background. The parallels of the church spire, they're all pointing up to a vanishing point that would be somewhere about 2 foot higher than my screen at the moment. So what I thought I'd try and do is play around with the perspective and go into transform perspective, and then just see if I can open that a little bit. Not too much, because it wouldn't look right, and some of the diagonals here are going to go in the slightly wrong way, but let's just bring that back to about there, and then double click and then deselect. And all I've done is just it's not as if we just go back to the history and just take it back to before I did that. So that's what we had, and that's what we've ended up with. Now that may be more dynamic in the way the shot is, but I just thought, let's not have all the angles of the church converging so sharply. This line here, and again this one. And by playing around with the perspective, we've kind of made it look a bit more what we assume the church would look like. So they're a little bit more parallel to one another with less perspective on it. It was just an idea. Some people may like it, some people may not, but that's what I did. So I can just save that one as well. That's the kind of process that I went through for my images, and I'm going to show you now some of those images, the 20 images that I took during the 5-day challenge. I hope you've enjoyed the video this week on black and white photography. If you like what you've seen and you'd like to see more of this, please subscribe and make comments on the kind of videos you'd like me to produce. Also, on Udemy we have a course on developing ideas, how to create ideas for video, and we're also producing a course we hope to release in about 3 weeks' time on how to edit video, which hopefully you'll enjoy as well. So again, thanks for watching this video. I hope you enjoy the material we produced, and I look forward to having something for you again next week.